Hallo zusammen, I'm your vlog Dave. Or should I rather say, yo bitch! Sorry, I just had to. So, yeah, some of you might have already watched my previous video, my previous German listening practice, which was also about Breaking Bad and El Camino. And if you watched that, you will already know that I love that show, respectively that movie, also Better Call Saul, but wasn't really about that. Anyway, this video is also about Breaking Bad, but from a more different perspective, because in my previous video that was basically a more advanced German lesson in which I just spoke German without subtitles, and this time I want to translate certain things that appear and that are featured in Breaking Bad to German, so you can learn some German along the way and, well, find out more about certain things and how they translate to German. For instance, names and stuff, because there is more to them than, well, meets the eye in terms of a German perspective, if you will. Let's do that. Let's translate Breaking Bad. Alright, so let's begin with the most obvious thing, the title. And Germans that don't really know much about the context of that one and, well, the colloquial American English meaning of that, if you will, they might have a hard time getting what it actually refers to. I mean, Breaking Bad? Schlechtes Brechen? Why? So, as I've mentioned already, it's schlechtes Brechen, bad breaking, translated literally reminding of bad vomiting, which ironically fits the whole Walter White vomiting situation and scenes because of his Lungenkrebs, der Lungenkrebs, mostly singular, luckily, lung cancer. The related German verb is brechen, sich übergeben, to vomit, which is one meaning of brechen, a more colloquial one, and the standard and neutral meaning is to break. The adjective bad is schlecht in German, therefore the unfitting literal translation schlechtes Brechen. However, the actual meaning of the American term to break bad is to turn towards a life rooted in crimes and evil activities, basically. In German, this would equal the saying auf die schiefe Bahn geraten, to get onto the uneven lane, translated literally. The noun die Bahn, the track or lane, refers to die Laufbahn, the career or path, or, well, the career path. Haha. Yeah, wouldn't be a really catchy title in German though, so they kept the American colloquialism Breaking Bad, or to break bad in that sense. And having addressed him a couple of seconds ago, Walter White. Incredibly portrayed by Bryan Cranston. I mean, honestly, I can't give the show and him enough praise for all acting qualities that are displayed here. Really, really, really awesome stuff. So, if Walter White were a German with a more German type of name, he'd probably be called Walter Weiß. While Walter might still be a common and frequently used name in America, it certainly isn't in Germany anymore, because a few decades ago it was quite, well, famous and popular, if you will. For instance, in my grandparents' generation, they were born in the 1930s. Well, back then it was quite a popular name, and well, even up to, I'd say, one generation after, it was still used and quite commonly given to boys as a name. But these days, you wouldn't find a modern, a modern boy sounds strange to say, but a kid, a boy that would be named Walter. No, probably not. Now, when Germans think of famous people named Walter, they might have someone like Walter Ulbricht in mind. He was a well-known German GDR communist politician who was primarily known and responsible for having the Berlin Wall raised in 1961. He also was the first secretary of the Socialist Unity Party, the SED, which was the only party allowed in the former GDR. This led to him also being the head of state in the former GDR until the early 70s. And if you want to learn more about the two separated Germanys in the 20th century, up until 1990, well, more or less just recently, so to speak, check out this video in the end card. Don't really know if he actually consumed any drugs. Die Droge, Singular, die Drogen, Plural, let alone Methamphetamin, methamphetamine, or meth, but he surely didn't carry the surname Weiss, white in English. Well, no, in German, and you know what I mean. And by the way, talking about colors, the blue meth, which has sort of a recognition value because of its color, der Wiedererkennungswert is blau, blue. So yeah, the German equivalent is Weiss in regards to the color, and the name in this case, which isn't an overly common German surname though, but it exists. Talking about his two occupations, one of them is being a Lehrer, der Lehrer, Singular, die Lehrer, Plural, the teacher, more specifically a Chemielehrer, the chemistry teacher, for die Chemie, the chemistry. On the other side, he has built himself a big drug empire as der Drogenboss, the drug boss, so to speak, or, which is a direct equivalent to the English term, der Drogenbaron, the drug lord, well, basically meaning drug baron. The periodic table that's seen in the intro is das Periodensystem in German, and quite a few of all these chemical elements were discovered, or in some cases artificially created, by German scientists. Talking about scientists, well, White's alter ego is called Heisenberg, or as you might call him, Heisenberg. As some of you might have guessed already, this name has a very German ring to it, hasn't it? And indeed, it was the surname of German physicist Werner Heisenberg, who lived from 1901 to 1976. He is widely considered one of the most influential and important scientists of the 20th century as a whole, also with having received the Nobel Prize for his research in quantum mechanics in 1932. And, you know, maybe, well, just maybe, it's just me, but you know, looking at this 1933 photo of Heisenberg, he really resembles a younger Walter White. Well, respectively Bryan Cranston, if you ask me. Well, a little bit maybe. Anyway, Walter's son, Walter White Jr., carries a name which isn't typical for German names at all. I mean, in Germany it's very well possible, and was quite common, not really anymore, but it still is possible to give your children the same name as, say, their dad or their mother, or grandpa or grandma or whatever. But in Germany, we don't have additional attributes such as Junior or the Third. Because the actor's full name is Roy Frank Miri III. We wouldn't have that in German. That's not common here at all. What's common though is his last name is actually the German noun for the middle, die Mitte, Singular, die Mitten, Plural. Not a common German surname, but very well possible. Common short forms of names like MJ or RJ don't exist in Germany either, by the way. We'd rather use common nicknames or short forms you also know about. For instance, when you have someone who's named Maximilian, you would call him Max instead. Also pretty much non-existent or very uncommon in Germany is the beautiful name Skylar, which I, being a German native speaker, hadn't really heard about previously or like prior to the show. And even though I can't really think of a common fitting equivalent to Hank either, his family name Schrader strongly reminds of extremely common German names, for several reasons actually. The first three letters are extremely common in the German language, for instance as a prefix to certain words or even names. I'm talking about the three letters SCH, sh. Even though it can be found in a few English terms and names as well, it's a very frequent part of German terms in specific. For instance in der Schrank, the closet or cupboard, die Schule, the school, and there you have it in English as well. Or der Schrein, the shrine, which is a good example for how many similar words in both German and English that are somewhat related in terms of their meaning still differ in the SCH versus SH syllable. Also, the suffix er in Schrader is very typical for many German nouns and other terms. For instance in der Lehrer, the teacher, der Schüler, the student, der Ermittler, the investigator, or der Eimer, the bucket. As a whole, it strongly reminds of a very common German family name, and I'm not talking about the likes of Müller, Miller, and Schmidt, Smith, which are very common in Germany. It's a different one, Schröder, with an Ö, an umlaut. The English A in Schrader sort of resembles a, well, quite weakly pronounced German umlaut Ö, I think. When Germans think of famous people called Schröder, we usually think of the former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who governed Germany from 1998 to 2005 when Angela Merkel, or Angela Merkel, took over. Again, I find this to be quite interesting because in German Marie, or the English Marie, well, there's a huge difference in terms of popularity. Marie isn't so common in Germany anymore and, well, not really used that often anymore. It's quite old-fashioned actually as well, and quite outdated as a girl's name. However, I could imagine that, for instance, in the US, that's different in terms of Marie. I find it to be very fascinating how different names get approached and, well, are seen in terms of popularity and, well, frequency and stuff like that. That is really interesting. Saul Goodman, a pun related to the English "it's all good man," Saul Goodman, would be called something like Alles gut, Mann in German. The term Salles would also be a contracted form of Es ist alles, it is all, it's all, Saul Goodman. But Salles, like that, it doesn't really exist in German at all. Like, that is completely made up. And it doesn't really remind of existing names like Saul either, so that doesn't work in German. However, Gutmann might very well be a rare yet potentially possible German last name, I'd say. Again, it would remind of a more Jewish kind of name. And before he actually became sort of famous as der Rechtsanwalt Singular, die Rechtsanwälte Plural, he worked under his real name James Morgan McGill. Now, James is an English form of the name Jakob. Morgan, however, doesn't really seem to have a direct equivalent in the German culture, as far as I know, but sound-wise it might remind Germans of the common German noun der Morgen, Singular, die Morgen, plural, the morning, or the related temporal adverb morgen, tomorrow. A prefix such as Mac in McGill or MacDonald doesn't really exist like that in German either. At least I don't think so. Or I can't think of an equivalent to that. Jesse Pinkman, yo bitch! And the brilliant actor Aaron Paul both share first names that originate in Hebrew, biblical times basically. Pinkman would be Rosamann in German. The English pink usually gets translated to rosa in German, even though, which is quite tricky actually, there's also a color Germans refer to as pink in German, which is different to rosa. So, for instance, this is rosa. It's a more, well, pastel-ish and lighter color than, say, pink, which would be rather this. It's usually a bit darker and often has a more neon quality to it. The latter half of his family name is der Mann, Singular, die Männer, plural, the man, which is not to be confused with the also existing German indefinite pronoun Mann, one or you. And if you want to learn more about the linguistic difference here, check out this video in the end card. New Mexico would hypothetically be Neu Mexico with a K instead of a C in German, but we usually don't change or translate the names of federal states. Holly White would be Stechpalme Weiß in German. Yeah, okay, of course. I mean, as a name, holly refers to exactly that plant, die Stechpalme, which I really didn't know before. And this plant is sort of seen as a metaphor for das Glück, the luck or happiness. Well, the more you know. During the show, she's still das Baby, Singular, die Babys, plural. And linguistically, this term is quite interesting because, on the one hand, it's one of many common Anglicisms we have in modern German. But the plural term ends differently than it does in English, and this is basically true for all Anglicisms I can think of that end in Y. So in English you'd have this end in IES, babies. However, in German the Y stays in plural. Gustavo Fring would be Gustav Frings in German. Well, not so surprising in terms of Gustav, which is again a rather outdated German name these days. But to my surprise, George Mestris, one of the Breaking Bad scriptwriters, stated that the last name Fring is directly related to the former German soccer player Thorsten Frings, believe it or not. Simply because Mestris is a big soccer or football fan, and he was a fan of this German player as well. And since the S in Frings would have sounded too much for his liking, I guess, he just dropped it. Last but not least, you might remember the Germany-based company Madrigal Electromotive, which was introduced later in the show. It's basically responsible for the air cleaning system and also distributions in regards to the Los Pollos Hermanos fast food store that's run by Gus Fring. The original German name of this company, Madrigal Elektromotoren GmbH, it's sort of related to that. Elektromotoren rather translates to electro engines in that sense. Just so you know. Yeah, I know, of course, there's much more I could hypothetically talk about Breaking Bad and some German-related stuff, or German translations of things in Breaking Bad and vice versa, and I might eventually do that in an upcoming video, but psh. What do you like about Breaking Bad? Did you like the show? Do you like the movie as well? Because, well, I was in the lucky position of not having to wait 6 years to watch El Camino. Well, luckily, because I just finished watching the show for the first time a couple of days ago. Hooray to me, I'd say. Yeah. And I just began watching Better Call Saul, which I also love. Anyway, yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm looking forward to do some more videos related to Breaking Bad in the future as well. Stay tuned for those. Feel free to subscribe for free to my channel if you want to learn more about the German language and culture. I also really enjoy, for instance, making videos about Rammstein and Rammstein songs, translate the German lyrics to English and explain the German lyrics, well, grammar-wise and vocab-wise. So if you want to learn, well, some German with bands, with music in a way, feel free to watch my other videos as well. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm your Vlog Dave. Tschüss und bis zum nächsten Mal.
Yo, bitch!